Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video. Today we're talking about spinning reels, and I'm gonna give you 25 or more tips on how to manage things, how to get your spinning reel, or how to get to know your spinning reel better, some gadgets to use with spinning reels, and I promise you it'll be a very, very different video from the run-of-the-mill videos that you see online. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Thanks so much for clicking on this video. And if you haven't yet, click on that subscribe button. Click on the notification bell so you get notifications every time we upload very useful videos such as this. This channel talks about the hows and whys of fishing, and we cover everything from big game, ultralight, everything in the middle, including fly fishing. And for you nerds out there that have been with me for a while, I feel sorry for you. Anyway, kidding aside, thanks very much for the continued support. So let's get on with this, boys, girls, and everyone in between. All right, first tip I'm going to talk about would be spool belts. Now, spool belts are included in some of the reels that you buy, okay? You don't need this for smaller sized reels, but anything over around 8,000, it starts there. Probably 6,000 for some, or we're talking about the 6,000 size, 8,000 size, and up. They don't have the clip. So for twin power Stellas and similar reels, they actually give you a spool belt. Okay, at least the Japs. I don't know about the Americans. Now, spool belts, you basically put them to keep the line, put them on to keep the leader from popping out of your reel, because it's really, especially fluorocarbon, they spring out. And they have this little space right here that's hollowed out. And all it is a loop. And then you push your line into that so that you could still play with your reel and you know where your leader's at. Okay, so if you happen to lose, and you will, there's aftermarket spool belts that you could get. Don't worry, I'll link everything in the description below. It's Amazon affiliate link, so every time you click them, I may, or if you buy stuff on that link, I get a little bit of percentage. It's not from you, it's from Amazon, so it doesn't cost you anything more. All right, and yeah, if you don't have the hair ties, or if you don't have access to the spool belt, rubber bands or hair ties actually work. I used to have long hair, so I have a lot of these lying around, and in a pinch, you could use them. All right. But, so that is tip number one. Tip number two, if you don't have access to those, or if you're in a pinch, a loop would suffice. Okay. You put a loop at the end of your line like that. And then the trick is to actually put it on in the opposite direction of where your line is going. Pull the tag. Okay. Bang. Just like that. And the reason why I don't really do this is because every single time I do this, I have to cut the loop off when I'm using it. So there is a disadvantage to this, but you could do that. Light line specialist. Spinning reels are undoubtedly the light line specialist of the fishing world, and with very good reason. All right. So when you open the bail, cast out, nothing gets kind of, no spool revolving and all that. The almost frictionless cast when you're using thin line on these light reels just works. Now, on a bait caster, you're dealing with a revolving spool. And more often than not, especially with light line, when you get a tangle, that's it. Such a headache. So light line fishing with these reels, it is amazing. Very easy with spinning reels. And in fact, they were actually invented to cast light lures because bait casters require a bit of weight for you to cast them. So these were actually invented for that purpose. One of the things that you actually hear when you watch videos or when you're fishing around people is that the drag, okay, is screaming, and they're attempting to gain line by pumping the rod and then reeling. Okay, now to illustrate this, I'm gonna have to pull this. All right, so it goes like that, and then you're reeling. All right, you're trying to reel, and what happens is that when you're reeling against the drag, it introduces line twist, and you don't like that, irregardless if you're using mono, especially if you're using mono or fluorocarbon. You don't want to do that, even when you're using braid, because it damages your line and it introduces line twist. And with line twist comes a lot of headaches. So, if you can, don't reel against the drag. Wait for the fish to stop, or palm your spool a little bit, pull the reel towards you, and then reel down. But never reel against the drag, because that's one of the ways to introduce line twist. Slowly gaining momentum in the US from Japan, where most of the innovations actually come from, is the reel stand. So, what is that? Your tip number 5? Reel stands help your reel or keep your reel off of sand, off of rocks, and other things that would bang and break it. But it's not just that. Some actually have these holes where you could put your lure or hook on to keep it away from the body and help save your guides, because a lot of people just put it on the guides and stuff like that. But you can put it here so it's away from everything, and it keeps your reel from getting banged up. So that's pretty good. You look here. This is underspooled by a tad bit, just a tad, and so is this. So this doesn't have a leader on right now, okay? And you can see that it's underspooled by a bit, just a tad bit. I'm not saying underspool it, all right? Underspooling helps with wind knots, because if you overspool, or if you spool this, especially with braid, if you spool it all the way up to the brim when you cast, that would really give you wind knots. Now, here's something very interesting. And, these are things that kind of people don't really think about when they're buying stuff. But there is a difference between a size 1000 reel and a size 2000 reel. And it's not just the ratio or the size. It is related, but let me explain. So we have 3 reels here. This is a size 1000. This is a size 1000, but this actually has a bigger spool than this one. So this is kind of like a 1500 as far as sizes are concerned. And if this reel has the same ratio, let's say, when you're casting out, because it has this one has a bigger spool, the coils going out of it is bigger. Now, if you're looking at the spool size, measure it, pull it out, because the circles actually form the spirals, you'll see that this will have a longer length, which means when you cast, this will give you farther casts than this. So a bigger spool will give you farther casts, and at the same time, when you're reeling with the same ratio, more line gets in, because since it's bigger, each time you crank, for one loop to form on the spool, there's more line, there's more length that it brings in. So think about how you want to use your reel for presentations. Like, take for example, if you want a slower presentation, smaller spooled reels would work better for you than a bigger spooled reel. However, if you want a faster presentation and possibly longer casts, get one with a bigger spool. So these are all used for different things. Like, take for example, when I'm fishing with soft plastics, they each give me a different retrieve speed and different distances, but essentially they're pretty much just for one purpose. This is how you hold a spinning rod properly. There's two ways. First, and this is the grip that you normally use it in, like, I don't know, probably 80% of the time. So you have your fingers in your hand, you go like this, all right, and like that. So you have your pinky and your ring finger in at the back of the real foot. You have your middle finger and your pointer finger right there. Your thumb can either go like that or like that, whatever is comfortable for you. Now, in some cases where the reel is big and you have small hands like me, I'd put three: my ring finger, middle finger, and pointer finger forward, and the pinky at the back. I usually use this for like the bigger reels. Like for this reel, I'd use that because, as you can see here, it's kind of big, and to actually hold this and have my finger on the line when I'm casting it, I have to go like that. Otherwise, it'll be too far back and it doesn't feel right. So for bigger rods and reels, I go like this. And then for smaller to medium sized reels, go like that. All right. So that's tip number 8. Tip number 9, feathering your cast. Very, very important. Now, if you want to be very accurate with spinning reels, and you can be, you have to learn how to feather your cast. So when you're casting out, you go like this, okay? A lot of people, when they cast out, they just go like that and then stop the reel if they want to have the reel land or the lure land in a particular place. But to slow the speed down of the cast, you can actually just put your finger like that, okay? And the coils will actually hit your finger and slow the cast down. Now, if you want it to stop, you just press your finger at the lip of the spool like that, and it stops the cast. So that way you could really have more control than just having it free flow and then stop it. All right. So feathering your cast, very, very important. Helps you with accuracy. Spear spools. This is an awesome, awesome thing. Okay. And you're going to have to do a little bit of research for your particular reel. But for me, I still use the older style Twin Powers and Stellas for this reason. Because I could actually just buy spools and it'll turn into a different reel. Now, here's a very good example. This is an 8,000 Twin Power. Okay, this is an 8,000 for jigging, actually 8,000 size. So have that, and then this reel is a 14,000. But believe it or not, 14,000, and this is a 14,000 spool. I could take the spool, put it there, it'll be a different reel. All right. Now, this is a 14,000. This is a 6,000 size spool from Studio Ocean Mark. I can take this off, put this on, and it will be a different sized reel. The reason being is that with spare spools, you can actually do quite a lot of things with just one reel. Let's say you only have one reel and you only want to buy one reel, but there's a need for you to use different sized braid, they're different sized or different type of line entirely, like mono, fluorocarbon. All you have to do is just buy a spare spool, and then you could do all these things. Now, take for example, you want to use braid, you want to cast far, you're fishing the ocean. One size reel, put a spare spool. For braid, casting out far, great. Move to freshwater, you want to use fluorocarbon, take the spool of braid out, put the fluorocarbon on, and you're fishing. Or mono, it depends, but it gives extra dimension for your reels, and it's fast, popping a spool off and on. And it saves you money because instead of buying 2 or 3 reels, you just buy 2 or 3 spools, and the spool is not as expensive as the reel itself. You could also increase the size, like I mentioned earlier. So this is a 14,000, this is a 16,000 spool. So you could decrease the size of the reel according to the body. So a 14,000 before, an 8,000 all the way up to 8. Okay, so 8, 10, and 14 actually share the same body. So you could just take the spool off of a 14,000, put the spool of an 8,000, and you have an 8,000 sized reel. But Studio Ocean Mark actually came out with these spools, which are 16,000 size. So you end up with a reel that's smaller in size than a 20,000, but has a capacity more than a 14,000. And from there, you use your creativity. You could do all sorts of stuff with that. Have more line for braid, okay? Have more capacity, and compared to a 14,000, but pretty much the same size, all right? Reels have different ratios, and depending on your use, you could choose the reel which actually suits you. If you had to choose one reel, let's say, to do a lot of things, I would probably pick the HG because it's kind of like the in-betweener, and it has like a bit more forgiving line retrieve speed. PG would be kind of too slow if you're doing surf casting. It has a lot of power, but it's very slow. You could use it for bottom fishing. You could use it for jigging, and that's about it. XG would be a bit too fast. So if you're just casting lures, that's great. But if you want an all-arounder, I would say choose an HG. Okay, which is actually kind of like most reels. If you're using it for jigging, it'll be like kind of tough on you, and it retrieves the lure faster up into the water column more than a PG would. So power gear, when you're jigging, it will give the lure the action, or the jig the action that it needs, but it won't pull it up and out of the strike zone faster, and it'll stay there for a longer period of time. So that's why it's ideal. If, however, you only have money or the budget to buy one particular reel, go with an HG, or if you're a specialist at jigging, just go with a PG. That's it. If you're planning to do just bottom fishing and jigging with it, that's it. Fast jigging. No such thing as a slow jigging spinning reel. Night fishing. All right. Spinning reels are better because, when you're casting with something like this and overhead, you're casting far, you don't hear the splash or you don't see the splash. And when it hits the water, that's the time when you actually stop the spool from spinning. Now, when you're night fishing, you don't really see, especially if the place is not well lit. Using a spinning rod and reel would just be easier. All right. So if you're planning on night fishing and you want it to be hassle-free, use a spinning reel. That's it. The spinning reel is truly a system on its own, really. As I mentioned earlier, you could use a reel and have it do a lot of different stuff. You just change the rod. Okay. So like take for example, we go to a 3000 and this is an HG. As I mentioned earlier, the HG is actually one of the most useful, if not the most useful ratio. I could put this on a specialized soft plastic rod and be totally happy using it. And then if I go lure casting, I just put on a different rod, probably a bit stiffer, because I want stiffer rods for my lures to work them. If I do top water stick baits and stuff like that, I have a different rod. Or if I could put this, if I put this on a shore jigging rod, which is a longer rod, it'd still be perfect and relevant. So one reel, different type of rods actually make a system on its own. So it's kind of the same for overheads. But see, the thing is, when you're talking about spinning reels, remember that we're talking about light line. So for lighter lines, especially, you'll find it hard to beat a spinning reel when it comes to certain uses. And yeah, it's not only useful, but you could use it for different things, and that's very, very important, especially if you're short on budget or your budget actually just permits you to buy a rod, which sometimes is cheaper than the reel. All right. This is something I'm very, very proud of. All right. So if you look at this reel, all right, it has this. I broke that off of one of my reels, and I was so distraught. Because you know what? When I looked online, it was so freaking expensive. And it was, believe it or not, $123.75. So this actually saved me, believe it or not, about $124 without shipping. And it's not a cheap reel. It's my Twin Power XD 3000. All right. So I lost this right here. And what that is very easy. All right. It's actually a big sized zip tie like this. Because I just needed like a part, okay, something like this that had, like this form, a tab. All right. So what I've done was to actually cut it flush with a pair of box cutters. This particular one right here. I cut this bit, and then installed it upside down like that. So all it is, see, its position is like that. Okay. So I cut this part right here. I glued it on the bottom right here. So there's a stopper there. I had to put a notch and then insert it, and then I just super glued it, and it works fantastically. Okay, like that. It holds the line. That's all you want, and there's no hole there that bothers me when I'm fishing. This saved me $123 plus shipping. So probably saved me about close to, I don't know, 150 US just for this particular tip. So yeah, if ever you need something like this, and guess what, guys, if you're watching this video and you think that this is something that you want to see me do, okay, I'd gladly do it for you. But comment if you want to see how I've done it, because I have another reel that needs that. Thinner line casts better on spin reels than they do with bait casters. So thicker line, it'd be easier on bait casters or overheads to use than thinner line. But thinner line is especially good on spinning reels. Again, it goes back to our light line specialist sort of thing, but especially with the spinning reel, and I'll show you why. This is your spool. This is the cross section. Okay, on a full spool, you wouldn't have much of a problem because line would just slip out easy. But at distance, okay, let's say with thick line, and you have, line up to that level, let's say, it has to fight going up and over the spool. Thinner line decreases this by a lot. It actually helps because it's thin. So the amount of reduction that you have is thinner, but with thicker line, it actually goes really fast. So thinner line on spools for spinning reels will help, not really help, but it would actually be better because while you're casting, its arbor is slow to diminish. So it gives you more speed when you're reeling because it is a bigger diameter, and when it's full and when you're casting, gives you more distance. Again, because it diminishes slower than larger diameter lines. So just with the reel alone, there's friction, and there's a lot more friction going out from the rod. It really reduces the casting distance. So with lighter line, you have less friction on the rod, and because it has also smaller surface area on contact with the guides, it just gives you a farther cast, better cast. All right. The easiest reel type to modify with lots of aftermarket parts is the spinning reel. As you can see, we have spools, we have knobs, metal knob, foam knob, these, everything you could think of, even gears and all that. It's very easy to modify, even full handles, actually, longer handles from Studio Ocean Mark, spools, and all this. you can buy for spinning reels easy. There's Gomexes as well, obviously, but there's a lot of parts out there, even if it's just for bling. All right, but spinning reels, just because of how common they are also the easiest to modify. So if you thought of, having your knob changed, like my Stella right here, so I could show just the knob. Okay, if I wanted this long, if I wanted to change this, if I wanted to change that, there's parts for those. Very, very common. You can find it online. There's a lot of sites dedicated to this, but the spinning reel is probably the easiest type to modify. And obviously, since they're the most common, they're also the ones that have the parts for readily. Spinning reels for all budgets, really. You have cheap ones all the way to the most expensive ones in this bunch. But spinning reels, because of just how used they are and how much in demand they are, there is a lot of reels that would suit any budget. Again, this is just from one or two brands right here. Actually, just two brands. You have Abu Garcia and the rest are Shimano, but they are representative of different budgets. And really, it depends on your budget, and it depends on how much you're willing to spend on your gear. But because spinning reels are so diverse and, well, they're so much in demand, there's so much supply out there, and there's one type or one reel to suit everyone's budget. Again, from the cheap one all the way to the more expensive one right here. So the cheapest one I have here is a Naski, and the most expensive one I have is a Stella in this bunch. Obviously, you have like middle tier ones such as these, and you have top tier ones such as these two right here. This one is a bit on the top end for Abu Garcia, but you'll see, again, all sorts of reels for anyone's budget. So you can just go out there, go to a shop, have the reel that's fit for your budget, for your needs, and off you go. If you bought them 15 years ago, 20 years ago, or whatever, they're still relevant till this day, depending on exactly how you use them for. But like, take for example, a 2006 Stella could still be used today, because literally you don't outgrow these reels. So these reels are actually older models, I believe, and I still continually use them today. But see, the thing is, you don't outgrow them. There are some technological advances that that are brought forth every so often, probably once every 10 years or so, where from one reel to another, the technological jump is just too high up. Okay, but reels that were made in the 80s, or let's say even in the 70s, are still being used today because you literally just don't outgrow them. One of the things that is special to the spinning reel is the perfect drop back. And what that means is that, where's the end here? There we go. What it means is that once you open the bail and you take the line, you could see that it offers no resistance unless you're severely underspooled, and then that becomes a bit of an issue because there is a tiny bit of friction introduced. But generally, when it comes to spinning reels, let's say you're fishing, bait fishing, and you're fishing with an open bail. When the fish takes it, they don't really feel the resistance. Whereas with an overhead, there's tension on the spool. Even if it's on free spool, there's a tiny bit of friction there, and the fish would feel that sometimes. Okay, and you can't really fish it just with this. You have to put the clicker on so that it doesn't overrun. Okay, so when you're bait fishing, this is an advantage of the overhead. Put it on free spool, put it on the clicker, and then when the fish pulls, there's that. But without that, it's gonna tangle with the spinning reel. And also, there's a bit of resistance. Even if it's on free spool, there's a bit of resistance from the spool, even if you modified with better bearings. But with a spinning reel, what happens is that it'll have the perfect drop back. Very important, especially when you're fishing for fish that are so finicky. And also, there are several instances where you're and live baiting and fishing with bait, really, that you want to have the perfect drop back. Fish just don't feel it. I can probably teach someone how to cast with a spinning reel in 15 minutes or less, and take them out to the water, give them instructions, and within that time frame they'd be casting like a pro, and casting straight too, because you know it only takes a few minutes to explain and to show how to cast a rod and reel, but it takes a considerable amount of time to get them to cast straight. But in 15 minutes, realistically, you could teach someone how to use a spinning rod and reel, and they could cast not only straight, but they could also cast far. A very, very easy system to learn, as opposed to, let's say, an overhead where it probably would take them a longer amount of time. And one of the reasons why this took off when it was first introduced. To take advantage of the drop back, we have a device. It's not limited to this device, okay? I'm just showing you this because I've used this when I was a kid. I have one of these, or a couple of them, and it's probably something that I want to buy down the line just for the sake of having it, call it nostalgia or whatever, but it's called the Dubro release clip. And what it is a release clip for your spinning rod and for your spinning rod only. You can't really use this. Well, you technically can. I've tried to use it on overheads just to mess around, but it's more effective, or it's really made for spinning rods, and it takes advantage of what we said before, the perfect drop back. And what it is a release clip. Okay, it's just a device to hold your line while your bail is open. Now, there was a time when I was fishing heavily for ox-eye tarpon in the Philippines, and I fished with an open bail. And what I've done, or what I would do, was hold the line on my left hand while I had my reel on the right. I fished with an open bail, and as soon as the fish takes, I let go of the line. The Dubro release clip is something that you put on your rod, either on the blank or on the handle. And when the fish strikes, it just releases the line. Obviously, with my system, I would just let go of the line. And then the fish would take it, and then that's that. But with the Dubro release clip, you don't have to hold the line. You just put it there. When you're bank fishing, you could just put a bell on your rod and then use the Dubro release clip, fish with an open bail. As soon as the fish hits, it'll move the rod. You'll hear the bell, and then the line would just go without the fish feeling any resistance. Go to your rod, close the bail, reel up, feel the fish, set the hook, done deal. Okay, one of the things that I don't see a lot of these days is this little device right here. It's called a line dancer. You buy them in a set of 3. They're not expensive. You put them in the rod like this, and there are 3 sizes. There's a small one, and then there's a medium one, which is this, and then a big one to fit different rod sizes. So when you cast it, when you cast your lure out, after your cast, you just put your line onto there, and then when you start reeling, just because of the nature of the spinning reel, it actually puts out a vibration every time you reel. So it moves your rod tip, it jiggles it for you, imparting a kind of like a small jerking action or a jigging action at the tip. So it gives your lures a different sort of action. It's not super, super drastic, but you can adjust the strength of this. The closer you are to the reel, the more the action would be. But even in its closest placement, it is not really that super drastic, but it's less tiring. So it's a very good thing to have when you're fishing really slow soft plastics. I would say you're fishing slow and it really imparts that small jiggling action, and sometimes it triggers fish to bite. We finally reach the last tip of this video. So what we're looking here is an American brand. It's owned by Pure Fishing. So Abu Garcia, and we're looking at the Xenon. This is their new flagship reel, and it's supposedly the lightest production reel of that size. So this reel is pretty good on paper, actually. If you could see, it's not a cheap reel. It's $550. In the US, it is offered in two sizes, 2500 and a 3000. Now, Pure Fishing, being a US brand, has no reason to limit its offering in, say, the largest fishing market in the world, which is the US. So here you see that it's 2500 and a 3000. And you go to Japan, the Japanese website, you see the same reel. Actually, the Japanese website seeing, well, if you see here, it's actually just the Japanese website translated in English, and it's one click on Google, really. I have to say that they're actually doing a better job at explaining the features of the reel. As you can see, it says saltwater resistant. Even if in the US, it actually says that it's rated for freshwater. And it outlines all the specs that the reel has. But as you scroll down, oh, actually, you can see the specs that's also listed in the US. But as you can see here, they also have the pictures. And then on the bottom, you will see that they're offering a lot more sizes and different gear ratios. So they have the 1000, they have the 2000, 2500s, and then 3000 and the 4000 size. A lot more than what they're offering in the US. And there's actually 9 in total, 9 models compared to 2 in the US. So you could actually choose the specific reel that you need. Look at the US specs. You could see here it's pretty much the same, but kind of rated only for freshwater. But the Japanese website actually states that it's kind of saltwater proof. But the biggest thing that you need to look at is the price. You could see that it's $550 in the US. And a quick conversion actually says that it is worth $369 in Japan if you converted. So even if you paid for shipping from Japan to the US, you actually come out ahead. It's cheaper in Japan. Now, if you go to Europe, you'll see that they have the same models as the Japanese models for sale. It's a bit expensive. I recommend you don't buy that from Europe. But if you have, if you go to like a Japanese website and order it there, even if you paid $50, you would actually still be ahead. Even if you paid $50 on shipping, even if you paid including, let's say, the taxes and custom duties and all that, you're still going to come out ahead. So yeah, I mean, don't limit yourself to what you see in the US market. Sometimes, or most times, you actually either save a bit more money or get what you really want outside of the US. All right. So guys, that's it for now. For those of you who reached the end of the video, I know it's lengthy, but I hope it has been knowledge packed for you and something useful that you could use. Thanks for watching. And really, if you haven't subscribed yet, please click on the subscribe button, click on that notification bell so that when I release these videos, you'd be able to view them before anyone else. All right. So, yeah, again, thanks so much for watching. See you in the next one. Class dismissed. God. Welcome to my 13th take. I was talking the whole time and it wasn't recording on my 12th take. My God. Anyway, this is painful.